This is the only section in the whole course where we're only going to talk about one thing, and that is division of polynomials. So we have two ways to divide polynomials. The first way we're going to talk about is through synthetic division. Now, we can only use synthetic division if our denominator is linear, and it has to be in the form of either x minus h or x plus h. If it has a coefficient in front of the x, no good. So if your denominator looks like this, then you can use synthetic division. So let's talk about synthetic division. To set it up, the first thing that you do is you line up the coefficients of your numerator. 1, 3, -3, -1, 1. Then you draw your divided by upside down. You take this number that you have here. So here we have t minus 3. You change the sign and you put it out here. So since it's t minus 3, change it to a positive 3 and put it on the outside. And now the reason why this is called synthetic division is because there's no actual division. It is all multiplication and addition. So we bring down this 1. Whatever number we have down here, we multiply with the outside. So 1 times 3 is 3. And that's what goes right here. Then we add this column, 3 plus 3 is 6. And that goes down here. Then we multiply bottom with the outside. 6 times 3 is 18. That's what goes right here. Add, multiply, add, multiply, add. And so these are the coefficients of my answer. Okay, so these are the coefficients of my answer. And the way that it works is that if we started with a t to the 4th here and we divided out 1t, then this would be t to the 3rd. And so then that would make this t squared and this t and this a constant. I'm going to rewrite this so that we can see it a little better. And then this last number is my remainder, and that goes over your denominator. So my final answer here would be this: t to the 3rd plus 6t squared plus 15t plus 44 plus 133, my remainder, over t minus 3. Okay, so that's synthetic division.
I'm sorry. I'm having a really hard time understanding why we go from the T4 to the T3.
What is t to the 4th divided by t?
Oh, T3. That makes sense. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we cannot always do synthetic division. This denominator here is not in the form of x minus h or x plus h, so I can't do synthetic division for the next one. When you can't do synthetic division, you have to do long division. And I feel like back when you first learned long division in like 4th grade, I said 4th grade and wrote a 4, it like struck fear in your hearts. Little did you know, at some point in your life, you would be doing long division with variables. So the steps for long division of polynomials are actually the exact same as the steps for long division with numbers, with one slight modification, and that is that we use leading terms when we're checking to see what we divide. So for example, I want to know what is 6r to the 3rd divided by 6r squared. And if you're ever not 100% sure what that answer would be just by looking at it, then feel free to come over to the side and do it. So my leading term divided by my leading term, the 6's would cancel, and r to the 3rd divided by r squared would just be r. So 6r to the 3rd divided by 6r squared is just r, and so that's what I'm going to put up here. And then when you're doing long division with numbers, your next step is to multiply. So we take this r and we multiply it by the outside. R times 6r squared is 6r to the third. R times 7 is 7r. Now I'm going to write the 7r over here because I'm writing it under the term that it's like with. If I wrote the 7r here, I can't combine a 7r and a 48r squared. So I moved it over here just because it's easier for me to keep all of the things that are like vertically. Okay. My next step to long division is subtracting. And now I noticed that for some people, it's easier to distribute that negative. And so make it like a minus 6r to the third and then minus 7r. Now, if you've done this right, your first term will always cancel. I have nothing to take away from a 48r squared, negative 48r squared, so I bring it down. And then 13r minus 7r is 6r. Now, the fact that I've brought down my last term over here and there's nothing else to bring down past it tells me that this is probably my last step. So we start with our leading terms. What is a negative 48r squared divided by 6r squared? Well, the r squares would cancel. And so a negative 48 divided by 6 is negative 8. So I'm going to put a minus 8 up here. The fact that I got just a constant tells me I was right, and this is my last step. So you'll know you're done with long division whenever you just are left with a constant up here. And now I multiply. Negative 8 times 6r squared is going to be negative 48r squared. And negative 8 times 7 is a minus 56. Which again, I'm going to put under the 53 since I'm going to try to keep like terms together. And then I subtract. But again, for a lot of people, it's easier to just distribute that negative. So make this positive and then make this positive. So negative 48r squared and 48r squared cancel. There was nothing to subtract from the 6r. And then negative 53 plus 56 is 3. And so just like with the synthetic division, when you're done, your remainder gets divided by your denominator. So this would be r minus 8 plus 6r plus 3 over 6r squared plus 7. Let's do another one. So I can't use synthetic division here because this is not linear. It's quadratic. So we're going to do long division. Start by dividing our leading terms. A negative 14w to the fourth divided by 2w to the third squared. I copied that down wrong. A negative 14w to the fourth divided by 2w squared is going to be a negative 7w squared. Right? Negative 14w to the fourth divided by 2w squared Well, negative 14 divided by 2 is negative 7. And remember, the rule is when we divide, we subtract. So 4 minus 2 is 2. Then I take this negative 7w squared and I multiply it by everything here. So negative 7w squared times 2w squared is negative 14w to the fourth. Negative 7w squared times a negative w would be plus 7w to the third. And a negative 7w squared times a negative 3 would be plus 21w squared. And then we subtract. So let's distribute this negative through. So it would become a plus 14w to the fourth, and then a minus 7w to the third, and a minus 21. Again, if you've done this right, your first term will drop. Negative 7w to the third minus 7w to the third is a negative 14w to the third. 38w squared minus 21w squared is 17w squared. Ooh. 14w to the third divided by 2w squared is going to be a minus 7w. And then we multiply. Minus 7w times 2w squared minus w minus 3. So that's going to be negative 7w times 2w squared is going to be minus 14w to the third. Negative 7w times negative w is a plus 7w squared. Negative 7w times a negative 3 is a plus 21w. And then we subtract. Now when we subtract, let's distribute that negative. So change everything's sign. Again, your first term cancels. 17w squared minus 7w squared is 10w squared. And that's going to be a minus 5w. The fact that that was my last bring down tells me that I'm probably on my last step. 10w squared divided by 2w squared is just 5. The fact that all I have up here is a constant tells me this is my last step. 5 times 2w squared is 10w squared. 5 times a negative w is a negative 5w. 5 times a negative 3 is a negative 15. And then we subtract. So let's distribute our negative. Change the sign of everything behind it. And then add. First term cancels. And then here, a negative 5w and a plus 5w, that cancels also. And a negative 23 plus 15 is negative 8. And so that's my remainder. So my final answer is this plus a negative 8 over 2w squared minus w minus 3. Okay. All right. Let's do one more synthetic division. So I can do synthetic division here because my denominator is in the right form. So I start by lining up the coefficients of my numerator, but you see how I'm missing a term with just an a? I need to put a 0 in that placeholder. So you need to put a 0 if you're missing a term. And I would recommend that on long division as well. And then change this sign, bring it down. So a -5 on the outside. So we have 1 times -5, and then add, times -5, and then add, times -5, and then add. And so now if we started it with an a to the third and we divide it out in a, that means I would start with a squared, and this would be my remainder. So if we were writing this so that it looked a little nicer, it would be a squared minus a plus 5 plus a -3 over a plus 5. Okay. That's it for today.